Ciclo de Formação em Acessibilidade e Usabilidade Digitais. Para capacitar. Para sensibilizar. 3 mesas quase redondas para promover o debate e o esclarecimento. 6 oficinas digitais, mãos na massa, para aprender como fazer. Temos a legislação, mas que obstáculos falta ultrapassar? Melhorar a acessibilidade e usabilidade dos serviços digitais, dos sítios web, das aplicações móveis, dos conteúdos e das próprias tecnologias de apoio. A transformação digital é a oportunidade.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. After the discussion of the 3 roundtables of the training cycle about accessibility and usability, today we will start the first hands-on workshop speaking about a content management system, CMS for friends. Currently, CMS is one of the most important author tools when it comes to publishing on the web. We will try to answer the question, what is the role of the CMSs in the digital accessibility? To develop the topic, we invited Susanna Laurin. Thank you, Susanna, for accepting our invitation. Susanna leads the research and innovation department at Funka. I suppose that Funka wasn't born in a garage, but have a very singular and amazing history. Born in the 90s as a joint initiative among disability organizations in Sweden, Funka was turned into privately owned company in 2000. So an history of about 30 years and more precisely with the company 20 years of experience. Today, Funka works with accessibility in digital interfaces in regards of content, design, and technology, web, ICT, and documents in all possible formats, apps, ticket machines, and automatic teller machines, but also signs and other kinds of information. They have also working in the accessibility of environment. More related with our workshop, among others, Funka is leading at the moment to groundbreaking EU-funded research projects in the field of authoring tools. One of them is FIT, that aims to have ready-to-use templates, and the other one is Cluster, aims to be a repository of best practices. Susanna is going to share with us the results of both projects. Susanna Laurin has more than 20 years experience in working strategically with accessibility. She takes responsibility for major and international assignments for the European Commission and a number of national governments in the member states, especially focusing on the transposition and the implementation of the Web Accessibility Directive. Since the first version of the European standard about accessibility of goods and services was published in 2015, she has been focusing on procurement touring in many European countries within and outside of the European Union as well. in South America and Australia. Susanna has also developed and published a series of instructive videos around how to use the European standard about accessibility of goods and services, the EN 301549, sponsored by Microsoft and published under Creative Commons license and available in website acessibilidade.gov.pt with closed captioning in Portuguese. If you want to see, take a look. Susanna is the chair at the Global Leadership Council of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, YAP, and during 2003 and 2019, Susanna has been the CEO of Funka, and before starting at Funka, she was working as the CEO of one of the subsidiaries of the Sweden Association of the Visually Impaired, IRIS. Susanna, thank you for joining us. I pass to you the control of the session. Welcome to Lisbon and to the world.
Jorge, muito obrigada pela invitação. I think I stay there because otherwise this will take forever. I need to concentrate a lot to convert my Spanish into something similar to Portuguese. But thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
So I am trying to share the screen, but that didn't work. Let me try again. So you almost told the audience about everything that I have ever done and also a little bit about the projects. So I don't know if I can now go back to my coffee or if you want me to do this, but are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Good, thank you everyone. I need to do a slight correction. Thank you very much for the kind words, Jorge. I am now the honorary past chair of the IAAP Global Leadership Council because I have another fancy title from that organization. I'm now leading the EU initiative for IAAP, and as you can't have two professions at the same time, you can't be in the board having voting rights and at the same time leading one of the big business strands, then I needed to resign, unfortunately early, but that means that I left the chairmanship to Mark McCusker from Textile, who is a dear friend and also a much better chairman, I think, than I ever was. But I am the past honorary chair, which is very, very nice. So I do have a visual impairment and I have a background in the visually impaired organization and I have also worked a lot with independent living. So I have a broad experience with the disability issues. And I am invited today to talk to you about accessibility by default. So how to make sure digital accessibility can make life easier, not only for the end users we do this for, but also for us who actually perform the work. So what's the problem here? Why are we doing this? Well, many people, when they think about digital accessibility, they think about technology. They think about developers and code and assistive technology, and all of that is absolutely correct. And it's also very much covered by the EN standard and also the WCAG standard that I'm sure that you have heard about a lot, all of you. So technology is important, but what we have found in our research, and I think that is also supported by a lot of other research, is that around half of the accessibility issues that we find when we do audits and user testing in public sector websites, those issues are created by the web authors. So by humans, it's not the technology, it's the humans behind it. Everyone who tries to create content has a big responsibility for making sure that the content becomes accessible in the end. And in most member states, at least where we work, we have clients in all member states, but we work much more in the West than in the East. So I know more about the Western countries. But almost in all these markets, there are in public sector bodies, there are many web authors, and in some large agencies there can be a group of professional web authors in the top, so to speak, the communication department, but then they may have 200 or even 500 web authors working with the content of the websites and services. And of course, not all of them are educated as communication officers, and certainly not all of them can be accessibility experts. I mean, that would be unreasonable. So we have, with the Web Accessibility Directive, no one knows the exact number of websites and apps that are covered, but if you count really conservative, it's at least 7 million interfaces. So, and even if not all agencies have as many as 200 or 500 authors, there's still a lot of people creating content in 5 million interfaces. So from this follows an enormous demand for training. And we are living from training, partially training people, and many of our clients our colleagues in the business, many of us working with web accessibility, we do a lot of training. It's very important because until now I have been working with this for most of my life, and I know so far I haven't met anyone who has made an inaccessible website because they don't like people with disabilities. It's a lack of competence and knowledge and experience. So that's why competence sharing and training is very, very essential to everything we do. But how are we ever going to train all these people? And then you may be web author one day, but then you go on to another work and someone else is taking your job, or you're on maternity leave, or, I mean, so many things happen, and it won't scale. If we're going to train all these people and keep them updated, that won't work. So even if we love to train everyone, we just can't do it. There's not enough boots on the ground to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways we can make it easier to scale the accessibility of interfaces at all would be to make sure that we do something automatic. So we had this idea, and I'm sure many others have had it too, but what if the authoring tools, the content management systems, the CMS, could provide built-in accessibility from the start, so that the web author doesn't have to do all these mistakes or possible mistakes themselves? Or if it's not possible to automate, because many things are not yet, at least, maybe it's possible to at least support the authors, to kind of hold their hand and guide them to do the right thing. That is what we lobbied for, to make sure that somebody could do something like this and investigate if this would be possible, because we thought it would be. And we were very happy. The European Commission initiated a call for tenders, or a call for projects, I should say. This is research projects. And we are always trying hard to get funding for our projects. And we were very lucky this time. We got funding from 2 projects at the same time. So as of a year, a little bit more than a year, I've been managing 2 kind of sister projects in parallel, which is very rewarding and very interesting, but also quite hard work. And as Jorge already mentioned, one of the projects has to do with ready-made templates that you can just download and use directly. And the other project has to do with more collecting best practices that can be used for all producers of authoring tools. So I will present both of these projects briefly. The first project I'm going to talk about is FEAT. That stands for Features for Accessibility Through Templates. And the aim of this project is to provide really hands-on solutions, something that works from the start. You don't need to do anything. You just kind of click the button and there it is. So we really want to build in accessibility in the templates already, so that when the templates are used by the web author, most of the things are already fixed. So there is no room for mistakes anymore. The things that cannot be fixed automatically and cannot be kind of boxed, because we know also that web authors need their flexibility. You need to be able to choose how to do things, and you want to do one page in one way and another page in another way. You need to have some kind of artistic freedom here. So for the things where we need flexibility for the web authors, we have a built-in support. So either it's not possible to make mistakes, or you can choose, but you are then prompted or you get a warning, and we try to guide you and hold your hand all the way. So we have used a specific authoring tool for this to be able to do a model. So what we provide in the project are model templates. But the idea of the project is, of course, not only to make one tool accessible, or the templates of one tool accessible, but to stimulate the whole market. And many CMSs are using templates as their kind of technical setup. So we are quite sure that this model templates that we are creating, they can be used directly if you use the same authoring tool, but it can also be used by many other authoring tools, or like an inspiration for other authoring tool providers. So in this project, we have, as always, used a very user-centric approach. We don't want to do things in theory. We like to get our fingers dirty and really work with people and with end users. And the users in this respect are, of course, the web authors, with or without disabilities, but the web authors, they are the ones we want to support in using this. So we have been doing, first of all, we did a pilot project that led into these two preparatory actions, as they are called. But during this, so we had a lot of pre-work already. But we did reach out to web authors all across Europe with surveys, asking them for what they need most and where they often encounter problems and so on. So we could base the work we do on the real user requirements here. We also had in-depth interviews with web authors, so to learn more of the details and granularity of their everyday work. Then we built a test environment, and this is one of the really cool things about this project, is that we've never made any prototypes. We built this directly in the authoring tool. So we have built up a test environment where the users that are testing this are actually creating real websites, which is quite nice. We then created user scenarios based on what the web authors we have interviewed and got responses from, what they say are their most common tasks in their day, how they create things. So we based the user scenarios on that. And then we did first a set of pilot tests, of course, to make sure that the test setup was possible to understand, because this was under the pandemic, so it needed to be done online, which makes the whole user testing procedure a little bit more complicated. And then we performed the user testing. And these user tests took from 1 up to 1.5 hours, and you really needed to do things, and you really needed to publish content online and also answer some questions. So these were really, really dedicated people that offered so much of their own spare time to help us with this. And then after the whole setup, we also made interviews with some of the participants to learn more about their perception of this whole setup. When we selected which templates to work on, we looked at different perspectives here. So we looked at the frequency of use, how often is a template used in the everyday work description, and also from the other side, how often do we see accessibility fails or accessibility problems in this specific functionality? Because if there is something where we see many people make mistakes, then that's very valuable to kind of sort out. And then, of course, we needed to limit ourselves to the technical feasibility, because authoring tools are often built up in kind of layers. So this authoring tool has a framework that we can't touch, because that is kind of the core, and we are not able to make any changes there. But to the templates part, we can do the changes. So we needed to kind of limit ourselves to the possibilities we had when it comes to the technology. And also we wanted to make sure that whatever features we were creating would also be implementable in other authoring tools. So another selection criteria was the perceived difficulty in making this specific asset accessible. So listening to the web authors, we learned which part were more difficult for them to make things accessible. And then, of course, we needed to know that the features that we are providing are also making life easier for the end users, who are then being the kind of end beneficiaries of making the websites accessible. So we wanted to make sure that we cover things that are really important for the end users. And then we made the user testing in real life settings. So the feed project is based on Episerver. Now they just changed their name to Optimizely, but it takes too long for me to learn new things. So I still call them Episerver because they have had that name for 20 years. So that is a very large market player in the northern part of Europe. And I know that they have very limited market share in Portugal. But it's interesting that the whole CMS market is very divided into regions. I know that you have Liferay and Typo3, and some specific CMSs are popular here, and some completely different are popular in Germany, and we have others in the Nordics and so on. So this is one of the big ones for public sector bodies in the Nordic countries. In the pilot project, we did look into which authoring tools are most used in public sector in Europe, and Episerver is one of the top 10 that are used by public sector officers or agencies, sorry, in the EU. And the whole user testing was set up like a pre-interview so that we know if the author is experienced or how often they create content and so on. So we have a little bit of the background, which is important to kind of weigh to balance their responses. And then we had the user scenarios. We let them create actual content and publish websites on the net. And then we had the survey after the testing. So a very ambitious testing. And I can assure you, it was so nice to look into what they have done. I thought we would just see gibberish, but really many of the web authors, they have created beautiful little websites with good, I mean, they'd made illustrations, or they took photos of their children, I don't know what they did, or they wrote poems and things. It was so nice. So I said that in another project, maybe we should do kind of a cultural and a museum exhibition of the website that was created by the test users. We had no idea that they would be so creative. So very, very nice bonus out of this. And just a couple of examples. I won't go through everything because this really takes time, but you can look at it at the website to dig deeper into this afterwards. So just one example. This is just a snapshot from one of the interfaces in the editor. So when you get into the authoring tool, you can of course choose how to format the content, and instead of letting people choose between bold and italic and all these sorts of things and sizes, we encourage them to, whenever you mark a heading, to really make it sure that it is a heading. And there is no way to create a design something that looks like a heading without getting a warning that, hey, should this be a heading or not? So what I'm showing in the screen here is that we have a structure. The order of the headings are in a sequential order, in a logical order, so that it's also easier for the web author to understand which heading to pick. And they're also visually separated from each other, so that the first one is bigger and bolder, and then they become smaller and smaller. Of course, the design of this can be changed, because that is not provided by the authoring tool, but by the designer. But this makes it easier for the author to understand what will actually happen when I choose one level of heading. And just for those of you who are knowledgeable about accessibility, isn't it strange that it starts with header 2? No, it's not, because in Episerver, heading 1 is the title of the page. So that is automatically, the heading 1 is always right. The only place where the authors can make mistakes is heading 2 and onwards. Another example is when you, oh, this is really small, I'm sorry. When you try to publish an image and you try to do it without providing the alternative text description that I hope that all of you know that you should provide, then that is not possible. If you try to push the button for publish, the system will tell you, whoops, something went wrong. You need to add an alternative text description. And this is, of course, extremely important for people with visual impairments to make sure that they understand what the purpose of the image is. And also for the headings, that's also, I mean, that's important for everyone, especially for people with reading and writing difficulties, and also other assistive technologies, as well as visual impairments. to have the structure of the website also technically designed in the right way, not only visually. So, but back to the alt text. So the system doesn't allow me to publish the photo if I do not provide an alt text, or if the photo is not, if it doesn't convey any meaning, if it's just decorative, then it is of course possible to tick the box for decorative, and then it won't have any alt text. So that's always the, but the decision must be made by the web author. But the system also gives you information about how to do it and when a picture is supposed to be considered decorative and so on. So we make it mandatory to make an active and informed decision of writing an alternative text or skipping it and marking it as decorative instead. And there's no way around this. If you want to publish your image, you need to make that decision. And we have seen in user tests that when we do this, people are very annoyed in the beginning, and then they stepwise learn. So this is also a learning process, being a little bit sort of tapping them on their head a little bit, maybe in the beginning. It doesn't feel very nice because these are grown-up people, but really it is a learning process. And after a while it becomes natural. And when you just do what you're supposed to do from an accessibility standpoint, then everything is as smooth as usual. So these are just some examples of what we have done in the FIT project. So, and the selected features that we do provide, this is not really meaningful, I think, for web authors that use other authoring tools. So, but it's the framework, so the big picture. The starting page is always there. The article page is like the generic page that you mostly use. And then we have the calendar event page, so you can make calendar events in a good way. And then we have two types of lists. You can either do page listing, which is usually just internal links, or you can do calendar listings if you have a lot of events and you want to list them to get an overview. We have the ordinary text block where most of the content is provided, the kind of the text content of the page. The images, of course, forms. One of the most problematic things on the web are always forms, and then a block for video. So 10 different features that we have selected based on the selection criteria I mentioned earlier. And this is really, if you have all of these and use them, and they are all accessible from the start, then you can easily create a small but well-functioning local government or national government website. It's not super complex, and of course, if you have services, that needs to be added. But just for the kind of ordinary basic information website, this should be sufficient for many agencies, at least, to start with. So, and then for the second project, it's called We for Authors Cluster. And in that project, we thought that, okay, we have now looked at the most used authoring tools. We know which ones are most popular in Europe, and they are very different, and they have completely different technology and different approaches to many things, but they also have common challenges if you look at them from the web authoring perspective. So we thought there might be a joint potential here somewhere. If we could collect all the market players or the major market players together, get them to work together, and then share knowledge. So we created a market cluster together with SiteVision, which is a licensed product, with Kit Concept, who are core developers of Clone, also very popular open source tool, Civic Actions, who are one of the core contributors to Drupal, one of the real big ones, Tiny MCE, that is really not, I mean, actually, if you want the details, it's not really a CMS, it's more of an editor, but they have 83% of the market of editors, so also a very big player. We had IAAP, of course, to reach all the suppliers. And then Joomla, one of also this very, very big and popular open source tools. They were represented by their German foundation, because they cannot, they are so open source that they cannot receive money. So we had to give the money, the research money, to the foundation, when that foundation is then providing training for their for their developers. So that's a very nice thing. And then Nexer here, they are the UK division of a very large company formerly known as Sigma. They also changed their name during the project period, but now called Nexer, a very large company, and they are represented Umbraco, one of the other really big open source providers. So apart from WordPress, which we couldn't get into this for, that's a long story, but that was not possible. But apart from them, we really have the biggest market players in this cluster. And we, in this, I mean, it's very similar to the other one, but it has a much broader scope. So we looked at the user needs and technical feasibility again. We were looking at what is the most common problems in all of these, in the cluster members, so to speak, in the participating authoring tools. What common problems do they have? And how can we possibly solve it in a way that it can be, that the solution can be used broadly in all different kinds and types of authoring tools. We also looked at what's already out there. If someone has done something good, for example, Drupal has some very good features, then we thought, okay, we could maybe use some of that and try to convert it into something that everyone can use, or we can refine it and make it even better. And then we did testing. From a technological perspective, we have done loads of testing to make sure that whatever we recommend is implementable in all sorts and types of authoring tools. And of course, also just in fit, from the web author perspective and end users with disabilities. And then this ended up with recommendations. We can't provide code for this because all the authoring tools are so different and they need to implement each feature in their own way. So the result of this project are recommendations and explanations I will show you shortly on how to make it. And there's also a very detailed technical specification, so anyone can implement this, but we can't provide the code because that will be different for all environments. We did a lot of web author user tests. It says here more than 100. It's actually more than 200 now from more than 20 countries. So not only most of the European countries, but also we have testers from the US and Canada and South America and so on. And of course, when we did these user tests, again, these were long tests. You need to be very engaged. It takes time. So we realized that the people making these tests, they are more than average interested in accessibility. These are the people we reach with our newsletters and our social media. These are people that are already interested in accessibility. And that's fine. And we did get a lot of feedback, of course, from these people. But the people we really want to help are the ones that hasn't got a clue about accessibility. You know, the people who don't know what they don't know. And how do we reach them? How do we make them spend an hour or 1.5 hours to do a test of something they don't know about? That's really tricky. So after performing all these tests, we realized that we had a too professional or too expert-like testing group. So we need to also reach the others. So we kind of fooled some of our clients. We made workshops with our clients where we had contacts to the people who are really professional and know accessibility, and we invited all their authoring colleagues. And then we started to ask questions on a very basic level. So we did ensure to get also this very kind of beginner feedback into this project. And now I am going to do a live example. So let's see if I can make this work. This is usually something I don't recommend my staff to do, because whenever you try to do live demos, everything goes wrong. But let's see if I can do this. Do you see my screen?
Right. Yes.
Thank you. So we have made long videos. I will just show you short snippets of this. So where we explain the whole thing. What is the problem from the end user perspective? What's the challenge from the web author perspective? What's the solutions that we provide in this project? What's the code that you need to use? And then what will be the end result for the user? So just to give you an idea of how this is used, I will just show you some very small parts of this.
My name is Joachim Centervik, and I'm blind. And because of that, I need to use a so-called screen reader to get access to my computer screen. And I know what's shown on the screen by listening to my speech synthesizer.
Hover for cell routing checkbox not checked, Alt+H.
Thank you. My Braille display. And since it's hard for you to read underneath my fingertips, I will make it possible for you to follow along. Take a look at the top left of my screen.
So we go on like this, really telling basically what is the end user situation here and why is this important. And we show it with assistive technology so that everyone, no matter if you're a developer, a designer, or a web author, can understand the importance of the issue. So that's where we start these things. And then we go on to the author to see why is this important from the author perspective.
I work for the European Disability Forum as a digital accessibility trainer. I know that tables need to be created in a specific way to be accessible to people with disabilities. But in authoring tool I need to first create a table and then go back and add all properties that make it accessible. This is very hard work and it's easy to forget something. I believe tables must be made accessible from the start. Why it is even possible to make inaccessible tables?
Which is a good question, by the way. So we describe the situation from the web author perspective here, and then we go to let's see where we are, the specific the prototypes here. So we show how this is supposed to be implemented as well.
Create an accessible table by using a template. Provide a list of templates containing different predefined table types from which the web author can choose. You can let the web author select the preferred number of rows and columns as long as these are predefined and coded in the correct way. Provide a preview of the table to make it easier to make decisions. It is also important to make it possible to enter a general table header that describes the content of the whole table. When the table has been set up, the web author can fill in the content. The result is an accessible table with the correct elements and attributes.
And then to show what this means in reality, we go to the code example. And again, this is also accompanied by technical specifications that can be read, of course, like in a document, but we also go through it in the
It's coded correctly. It contains a table header that's coded as caption, column headers that are coded as TH, table headers, row headers that are coded as TH, and scope attributes, which specify whether header cells are headers for columns or rows for table headers.
Okay, so as we have limited time here, I won't go through everything. Then this ends with the end user coming back and the table works for him. So that's kind of, you have the whole story there. So this way we are providing information on all or examples, demos, if you will, for all the features that we have created in this project. And as you could see, the video was not perfectly finalized yet. It didn't have captions, for example, and we need to cut it a little bit extra because the sound is here and there. But so that's why I didn't want to send it to the hosts here, because it's really not finalized. But we are working on the last refinements, and very soon it will, all of these, the 10 features will be possible to download or look at from the website. So that was just a short example, and I hope I am again sharing my PowerPoint presentation. Jorge, can you just?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I think, yeah,
so,
it's right.
So just to let you know which the features are that we have created in this project. We have the tables creator that you saw snippets of. We also have a very interesting feature called change language, which is not where you change the whole language, but just change language or parts, which is something that no other authoring tool have, as far as we know. We also have a new forms editor, because tables and forms, that is what web authors struggle most with the accessibility of. We have, of course, the classic alternative text description. And here we also, not only we have the mandatory and prompting and so on as in the previous project, but we also use or recommend to use the automatic suggestion of alternative text that can be used if you use machine learning and artificial intelligence, because we have seen in user tests that even if those sometimes are creating crazy alternative texts, especially in languages like Swedish and Norwegian, that where there's not enough data, still it's much more easy to get web authors to change an incorrect alt text than to provide one from the start. So we think the suggestion will make it much more probable that people start filling in alternative texts. We have a video feature because we know many web authors struggles with video as well. And then we have some recommendations on how to do the documentation. So if you have accessibility features in your authoring tools, then how is this documented? Our user testing shows that it needs to be contextual, because very few authors, if they stumble over something, they don't want to go to the library and borrow a book and read about it, or find the paper where that was, or taking the manual. They want the help directly. So it's much better to have direct contextual support and help. So that is our recommendation. And then we have 4 features that consider testing. So we have one testing feature that is live testing while editing. So very similar to what you can have if you write in a Word document, for example, that the spell check automatically tells you that this is wrongly spelled with a little red line or something like that. So you don't even make the mistakes because you can correct them on the go. The other testing feature we have is testing of a full page. And that is when you, for example, you don't only write text, but you also use drag and drop functionality, or use content that other authors have created, or you link to or get iframes in from other parts of the website. Then you need to control that all these objects or blocks are accessible and that they fit together in a good way. So that's where we have the full page testing feature. And then, of course, for the person who is responsible for the whole website, or the website owner or compliance officer, needs to be able to check the whole website. And we do believe, I mean, there are 150 testing tools out there, but it is added value to have the testing procedures inside of your tool instead of needing to go out and do something somewhere else. Also, we have testing of documents, because another kind of favorite, or what's the opposite of favorite, but we know there are billions of inaccessible PDFs out there. So some kind of testing of documents is really, really needed everywhere. So these are the features that we are presenting in this project. I try to wrap up a little bit quickly. I hope that you will get these slides afterwards. Otherwise, please reach out to me and I will make sure you have the information. So the results of these 2 projects, as they are EU-funded projects, they are free for everyone to use, of course. And the FEAT will provide technical specifications and guidelines for anyone who wants to use the templates. They will be freely downloadable from something called the Marketplace and another place called Foundation. They are both connected to Episerver, so that's where Episerver partners and Episerver clients can download the templates directly and start using them. We will also provide, as soon as the code package we have created has gone through the validation and qualification process with Episerver, that is on the way, but it's not happening yet. As soon as that's finalized, we will also publish this on Bitbucket. And Bitbucket is like GitHub. It's just another place to provide code. So anyone, even if you have another authoring tool provider, can download the code and use it in their own tool. You can also look at where I took my screenshots from, and more descriptions of this, more made not for developers, but more for the users, the web authors. You can find that information on funka.com/feat. In the cluster project, we will provide technical specifications, of course, and also guidelines for anyone who wants to use the repository. We are also, as you saw the parts of, we are creating videos and screen recordings where we present the whole result of this. And we are producing them right now, so they are not really finalized, but they should be finished by the end of this month. And they are to be found at accessibilitycluster.com. So I have been speaking a little bit too long, but hopefully it's okay. So I'm open.
It was perfect. Yeah, it was a fantastic overview of the 2 projects And I think the outputs of the both projects are very interesting, and we need to read the information and to practice all the good guidelines and recommendations that the two projects outputted. I'm checking the YouTube chat, and we have here a question about of Vera Matos that I will translate directly from the Portuguese. And she asked how to enhance the accessibility issues in a website that already exists and use Joomla. I think this question was made before the 10 features that you present. So the question is what we need to do, for example, in Joomla to have an accessible website. And I think this is the resume of the features that you present right now.
Yes, and I can also add that all of these, the members of the cluster consortium, they are, of course, they have all their own business logic and processes for implementation and so on. So it will take, they have different timelines on when this will be implemented in their core. But Joomla is one of the fastest ones because that's a very small core team. So they have planned to add, if I now remember correctly from the top of my head, 3 of the features already in the next release, and then they have like a backlog for all the features planned in the future. And by the end of this month, we will also present the report with the implementation plans. That needs to be first, so that we have a timeline for each of these, so you can know exactly when they plan to release it. But that also, because it's a European project, it needs to be first accepted by the reviewers, and then we can publish it. But if you reach out to me specifically asking for the Joomla timeline, then I'm happy to share that with you, because we know more or less when they plan to kind of update their current, they don't call it templates, what do they call it, themes, to also fit with the features. So all of these cluster members, they have committed to implement the features, all of them, but it will take different times in different companies, just because or organizations, because they work in different ways.
The cluster project have a repository of information. It is possible to consult the repository, trying to find information specific, for example, about Joomla?
Yes, there are. It's on its way to be built, I would say. The project ends by the end of August. So during the summer, we're just wrapping up and confirming everything is correct. But as soon as we have all the videos and all the presentations ready, we will also publish the technical specifications and also the information about the specific cluster members. So that will be on the project website, accessibilitycluster.com. We don't have all the details there yet, but it will very soon be uploaded, because I usually prefer to go sailing when the weather is nice. So in July, I disappear from my desk or my kitchen table, which is right now.
Yeah. We have here another question that maybe is a misunderstanding of the presentation. Is a question from Sergio Bello. He asked, are you planning to expand FIT to another CMS solution, such as, for example, WordPress and Liferay?
Well, I would be super happy to try to do that. And we did ask, or we have tried to, or we have had been in contact with Liferay, and I know Jorge wanted us to specifically look into that. But unfortunately, they were not prepared to get into the project. We had a possibility. We built the cluster by having some original partners, and then we also had a possibility to reach out for subcontractors. So we have had quite a lot of funding for authoring tools that wanted to join us, but we didn't get Liferay on board, and I'm very sad about that, because that would have been extremely interesting and relevant. So I hope that they will reach out to us and try to get into the next generation, because the cluster members and we have already decided to keep on working together and to continue with this network and community. And we are now trying to lobby for the Commission to give us a little bit of funding to make that happen. But I'm sure we can try to, we are already writing another, another set of proposals, so that we will keep having funding for a third round of this. So no one would be more happy than me if Liferay or anyone else would come on board. And I think maybe they will, when they see that this has been successful and that really the big market players are there. So we have had a lot of interest from other market players as well. And when it comes to WordPress, that is a tricky piece, because WordPress is open source, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it has a company in the top, or in the base, I don't know how to put that, but there is a company, a commercial company called Automatic, and that is a US company. And I guess I'm recorded, so I should put this nice, but they are not interested in accessibility. They don't see it as a driver for business. So everything that has to do with accessibility is only managed by the developers, and the developers can't commit to make sure that WordPress is actually updated. The only thing we can do is to try to educate the developers and the core developers and make them kind of do a grassroots movement to try to push in the right direction. But there is no one who could put on a hat and say, I am now WordPress, and I promise to implement this in WordPress core, because that is a locked community by this company. So it's a strange mix. It is open source, but on the other hand, it's not open source. So that's why we can't get them on board. That said, we have been making this presentation and other presentations as well at the WordPress Accessibility Days. And we have had many WordPress contributors and developers listening into our workshops and events, and I know they're very, very interested. So my hope is that will stepwise also change a little bit, but unfortunately, I don't think we will ever get them on board in a research project like this, because that doesn't really fit with their business setup. But Liferay, I have much more hope there.
Yeah. But anyway, any content management system manufacturer can follow the guidelines of that you found in the projects, so anyone can do it and put available these kind of features in their CMSs. Right?
We already did the work, so they can just take advantage of the results and put it into their own tools. So I think everyone should do that. Yeah. And we have had a lot of interest from many different tool makers, and also learning management systems. So that's one of the ideas we have for a future project, is to not only look at content management systems, but also learning management systems, because that's also authoring tools. So it's kind of the same but different a little bit. So.
So just to finish, that I think we don't have here more questions in the chat. Final question: do you have some kind of lessons learned with the strategy of accessibility by default inside of the author tools? So with these two projects, do you have some kind of lessons learned that you can and could and want to share with us?
We have many. We have learned a lot, and I think it was, for us at Funka, if I can be very kind of egocentric for a while, we have really loved the cluster project, because we have gone to work so closely with super big market players that we usually never reach in this way. When we try to reach out to content management system producer, they don't even answer our email. They don't. We are no one. They don't. We are not part of their club, so they don't. They don't listen to us. They don't know who we are. So it's very, very hard to get in there. But when you come with all the market players backing you, then it's a completely new story. So we have not only learned a lot, but we have also, I think, built a platform that makes it much easier for us to now have an impact on this whole market, and that has been really interesting. And I was told that we were crazy when I had this idea of collecting all the market players. People said, no, they will compete. They will never, that will never go. And it has been a little bit like herding cats for a while. But it has been very, very, I mean, resource demanding for us, but also very rewarding. And I think just the fact that they all want to continue, that means something. So it has been valuable also for them. The other thing that I learned that is less positive is that even if those tool makers and those developers that we have been working with, these are the guys who are, they're only male, sorry, except for one, but these are the people who really are interested in making the world better for people with disabilities. Yet none of them have ever done anything like this. They don't user test this way that we have done in this project. These are developers who are developing code and imagining what would be good for web authors or end users, and then they just provide the code. They don't test things in reality.
User statistics don't exist.
No, that is very disturbing to me, that even big players, good people, they are interested, but they're still doing it in theory. So why on earth don't people test with real users? That's still, I don't know. I'm a dinosaur in this, and I think, how can we, after like, I've been talking about this for 35 years and still people don't test with users. It's amazing. But otherwise, very, very positive. And I think building accessibility into things by default, that is the future. I mean, that there's nothing else that would have such a big impact for web authors and for kind of inclusion. If we make it impossible to make mistakes, of course we solve a lot of problems. And I don't think this will solve everything, but I think this is a giant step. And what I plan to do when this project finishes is to try to convince the procurement agencies that they are going to say, you need to procure a tool that has built-in accessibility features, because they have the power to really push the market in one direction. And if the big players say, okay, we can do this, then there's no problem. Then you can have that as a requirement when you procure.
Very well. So thank you very much, Susanna, for sharing with us all the findings that you got with this research and other research of Funka that I know you are doing. Thank you very much. We reached the end of this workshop, and next week we will talk about accessibility of documents. As Susanna said, documents like PDFs, Word, Excels, PowerPoints. So this will be the issues and the topic of the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.